we're not seeing ourselves and the kids as a whole collective to be able to support the kids in these spaces. And the reason we're not able to see these kids is because when we were kids, we weren't granted these spaces, and we just had to go along and we just had to keep moving on and be successful. Times have changed, things have changed, and we need a different way of doing things.
Welcome to the Mindset on Resilience podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Truelove, and I am excited about the guest that we have today. This man is international, global, known across the world for not only the work that he's doing in schools, but also within his business, the work that he gets the opportunity to do. Powerful work to restore. He is someone that I am honored to be able to call a friend of mine. He's an individual that whenever I have questions, you have those go-to people. He's one of those individuals that I'm always reaching out to, and he always comes through. And he's a speaker. He's an author. He's a curriculum developer, someone who also helps other people develop curriculums as well, counselor, but most importantly, he's a husband, he's a father, and an overall great person. I'm excited for the conversation that we are about to have with none other than Carlos Malave. Carlos, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I appreciate the intro. Love you, bro. You know what I mean? We've been at it for a while now. I'm super proud of what you're doing and this whole podcast you got going, the conversations that you're facilitating. I'm honored to be a part of this. So thank you for having me on, man.
Man, thank you. I just want to make sure that I do your name justice. Was it Malave? Did I do that right?
Did it right. You did it right. You did it right.
That's good. So I want to get into it because obviously, you are doing a lot of amazing work. You not only operate within the counseling space, but you also operate within a restorative power space as well. For some, they may not know, what that means. So I would love for you to do us the honor of taking us on the journey of what got you into counseling and also the work that you do with your curriculum and with restorative power.
Absolutely, man. Well, I've been in education for about 13 years, working at all different positions. I was fortunate enough to meet some incredible people that believed in what I do as a speaker and as an educator, and they created positions for me. One of the positions that changed my life was a restorative justice counselor position on a campus at Kip Houston High School, to be exact. And I did a speaking engagement at a conference for restorative practices. Didn't know what it was prior, but a lot of what I spoke about connected to it. My father was a product of the school to prison pipeline. He was in prison when I was in my first 2 years in college. So, like, I had that understanding of the work that needs to be done. When it comes to restorative justice, it's about being able to get the person who did the harm and the person who was harmed to have a conversation, to understand and move forward. And when it was implemented from the prison system to the school system, it was a way of dealing with conflict to get to a resolve so the person and the student knows what they did wrong so they don't continue the behavior. So that's where it stemmed from. I've been doing that work since I was a little boy with my father. My father struggled with controlling his anger and articulating himself. He had a lot of trauma, unmet trauma growing up. So I did a lot of that. So I was put in a position where I was forced to have those conversations with my dad since I was 10, 11. So it was something that was coming natural to me. And I just started doing it for a living, which was awesome. And I was able to create a curriculum from Kip Houston High School where I was dealing with conflict with students and staff, and then they gave me a class and they said, "Hey, yo, teach this class. These seniors and juniors have credit. You can do whatever you want." And I was like, "Whatever I want." So I kind of like within the position now I'm getting paid salary. I'm like, "All right, cool." So I sat down with some lesson plan savants. I aligned it to standards, aligned it to ELA standards, and then made it measurable with assessments and made it like a real thing. Because when it comes to restorative practices, there's it's usually used to react to something. It's never proactive. So I was trying to be proactive as getting it taught in a way where kids can build these skills before something goes down, and then they're familiar to what is circle, what is a restorative conversation, right, and how to have these things go on a regular basis. So I taught the class. It went phenomenal, and the kids were I was able to give the kids duties on campus, and I was like, yo, Ibrahim, there's a fight in room 202, go up there, see what's going on, resolve the conflict, take notes, and then come back to me. We'll set up a circle. They had lunch duty, they had morning duties, hallway duties, and started being representatives of the campus. I started using my network, getting them do engagements at other schools and do circles at other schools from what they learned in the class. And then ABC News did a feature on us. This was 2019, and it was going really well. Like the best could have happened from it. And then from there, it just built. That's where the restorative power program came about. Um, but yeah, that's basically what I do. That's how I got into the work. I'm a college counselor on a high school campus right now, and I continue to have those conversations with kids as they move transitioning from high school to college, along with speaking on college campuses and so on and so forth. So that's what I do currently right now.
Man, that's awesome. So we gonna have to dissect this a little bit because you spoke about your introduction into this. Talking about you had to be introduced to this work from the ages of 10 and 11 because of the relationship with your father. And I want to dive into that, but I want to kind of show some of the fruit of the work that you've done because I think it's amazing that you said you started doing this on a high school campus, and you started having these restorative circles, and it's not reactive work. So a kid gets suspended, and now they have to go through a restorative program for them to come back to school. How can we be more proactive in the work that we're doing? Because if I'm being honest, man, it sounds like what the work that you're doing we need it in every school. We need it on every campus. If I'm hearing you correctly, that's what I'm hearing. So can you kind of help me understand, or our listener to understand what exactly are these circles, and what are you able to do to help them become leaders on their campuses?
Yeah, no, of course. So along with that, even I go even deeper with it. So in that same year, I built a class. I'm doing the work on this campus, working with staff and students. It's going amazing. And then I started working with them in 2018, and then we went for Christmas break. And then when we got back, it was like a weekend, January 10th, 2019. My father committed suicide, and that's where everything changed. So I say that because that's where it went from restorative practices to restorative power, because I had to use the practices and the stuff that I was preaching to save my own life. For the first time, I was a motivational speaker, and I was telling people, you got to get up even when you don't want to, this and that. And I literally couldn't get out of bed. Like I had missed my dad's call before he jumped in front of the L train in New York City. And ironically, I was talking to two of my mentees about their relationships with their fathers when I missed the call. And so the guilt that came behind that was like another level of stress, another level of, you know, things that I had to process. So when that happened, and I was the one in the family, I'm the oldest out of my siblings. And when it happened, I had to go identify the body. I had to get everybody together. I had to calm everybody down, and I had to just keep going. I didn't get time to like really process. When I got back, um, my wife was like, "I'm nervous," and I'm like, "For what would happen?" She was like, "Cause for a long time you were built to be better than him. Your measuring stick is gone. Who are you now?" That hit me so hard. I didn't know how to answer that question. The next day I was in therapy, and I didn't understand what therapy was about until I went in and I started. For once I was coming back to my wife, I didn't realize I was just dropping the backpack on her. I was dropping the backpack on her. Like I'll come home and I'm like letting it all out, my father stuff with work stuff and everything. And she didn't let me. She kept just pushing me, encouraging me to go to therapy. And when I went to therapy, I figured it out because when my dad went to therapy, he was like, "Oh, I'm wasting money. Like they're not giving me no answers. I'm there. They're not telling me nothing. It's like, why am I there?" So I had that idea of what therapy was from dad's experience. But when I went in, I started talking, it kept asking me questions, and I kept answering my own questions and just diving in and processing. It clicked. I was like, oh, there's a space for you to just drop everything, process it, understand it better, so that when you go back to your loved ones, you can have a elevated conversation, right? And not just process and drop it and like vomit on the situation. Is more about like, you know, you understand it better, so now you can discuss it, right? And so with that, going to therapy and using the work, you know, kids can smell fake from a mile away. So like I've been through stuff. Like I said, my dad was a product of the school to prison pipeline, but this was a whole nother level. So I had to dive straight into like becoming this person. I'm still working on becoming that person every day, on being honest. I think Killer Mike has he just won a Grammy, and he has this song, and the start of it is called Run. The start of it, Dave Chappelle's talking. He has this quote that just stuck out, and it's holding true. I'm saying it over and over. It's like, no one asked us to be perfect. We're just asking that we be honest and just dive into those conversations. Be honest with yourself. So constantly having those conversations with yourself, doing the work with the loved ones, with your friends, with your whole environment, your whole community, before you get into the workspace. So all that to say, that's the work that I do, where I go into these spaces and I train staffs now, college, high school, corporate, where I'm coming in and to even talk about doing circles and all that is about who you not talking to, what conversations are you having, what are you running away from that's causing you to come in this space and not be fully efficient because of it. So that is the work that I do. I have people dive in, and you see my work when I post about it. It's more of a like a full engagement, because I don't just go up there and speak. I create an experience. I use my story, but then I get them to talk about it. Somebody told me this a long time ago, and it hit. It's like the only way you get someone to think about their mother, you got to talk about your mother. So I use my story to lead by example, and then I get them to think about that conversation that I was able to have with my dad, the conversation they didn't have to have with their person, right? Um, and I get them to have those conversations. So within my workshops, within my engagements, it's all about creating the space of understanding that and being able to get them to the place of, okay, let me process this conversation. Let me create this conversation in my head, and then let me practice it with a stranger. Now it becomes easier, just like therapy. You practice it in therapy, then you're able to talk about it better with the person that you need to talk about it with. So, like my engagements, you are communicating this stuff to a stranger, which is difficult to do. You push yourself to do it, and then you're able to take that conversation and you have repetition of it. And now you're practicing it better. Now you're doing it with the person you need to do it. Now it becomes a little easier, right? So, after my father passed, I used to do these trips to New York. I live in Houston, Texas now, originally from New York. I moved here when my daughter was 1, but I would continuously get these speaking engagements at my alumni in SUNY Cortland or schools in New York City. And I would drive in, I would fly into New York, and I would drive with my pops to, connect with him. And we used to have these 7 hours, 8-hour drives, and we would laugh, talk, cry, scream, and we really hashed it out. So I was very fortunate to have those conversations before my dad passed, and I had them on a consistent basis. And I remember I had a speaking engagement February 3rd that same year. My dad just committed suicide January 10th, 2019. So February 3rd, 2019, I had a speaking engagement, and I had it set up where it was already booked where I was going to drive out with my father. I was able to get his brother, my uncle, to drive up, and we connected, but it was still a void there. And I remember going up and speaking for the first time after it happened, and everybody was trying to convince me, like, hey, like, you don't have to come. Like, we completely understand. Red, do not come. You're good. And I was like, I made a commitment, and I wanted to, like, do it in honor of my father. And I'm glad I did, because it was the hardest thing I ever had to do professionally. Whereas I went up there, I was choked up, I was emotional, but I was able to push through it. And I remember I got a standing ovation. But what I noticed and what clicked, I had a speaking engagement a week after that, and it became easier, Then I spoke about it again, and it got easier. It got easier where I'm on a podcast and I'm talking about my father's situation without shedding a tear. It's not about not crying. I'm more of a man now because I cry, and I've cried a lot. And I think you being able to push, and that's where the restorative power comes from, because it's the power of vulnerability, being able to take your power back every time you let it out. But we so caught up in whatever stays in the household, whatever happens in the household stays in the household, right? So that's what killed my father. So I'm living through that example of like getting people to that space to be able to push yourself through the power of vulnerability, take your power back, and restore yourself.
I'm glad that you did the work personally. So now that you're able to help others now go through that process as well. And your father's story doesn't stop, when his life ended. His story is still being lived out through you. And I think that's, an amazing honor that you get to pay to him because he had a tremendous impact on your life. And um, even in an unfortunate situation, he was able to impact you to like live out a different level of purpose, knowing how important it is for us to walk in, our power, to walk in our transparency and vulnerability, and not continue to walk into the, whether it's schools, whether it's work, into your homes, as like a shell of yourself to really live your truth. And that's one of the things that I see, 'cause as you know, with the work that I do, is that, man, it's a lot of students that need those skill sets and those abilities and those techniques or whatever you would call them practices for them to be able to not go in and punch somebody because somebody said something about their mom, or for them not to cuss a teacher out, or for them it's not normal to spend half of the year in alternative school. And so can you tell me a little bit about how through this work that you've been able to you know help schools have decrease, or increase things like attendance, decrease things like, behavior, and help them excel because now they're no longer hiding themselves and they are really walking within their power, because I've seen that you're making a huge difference in the life of a lot of people.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. And like what we spoke about, the ABCs, you talked about the A, the B, and the C is all about attendance, behavior, and connections, right? And community. So I think going down to the gist of it, when I see a kid flip over a table, scream, punch a hole in the wall, I see my father. And I think you need to put yourself in the place of like, who do you see? Because that's a cry for help. And it is hard to get to that place when you haven't done that work yourself in your own life, right? To see something like that as a cry for help. So, what do you do in that moment, right? Do you raise your voice, or you keep your tone and let them come down to you, right? That's something that I learned from when I was 10, right? My dad would come in and rage, and I will keep a tone that he'll come down to my level. And like, I'm not perfect. Like, I still struggle in moments. I get emotional. I have my moments where I struggle to do it, but it's something that needs to be consistent in your life of practice, right? The only way you get better is continuously correcting yourself and practicing it in those moments, right? When they come about. But I think it's getting people to understand that part. Like, what do you need to see? What work do you need to do? These campuses, it's not necessarily the kids, it's the adults. Most times I see most of the issues happening with the adults because the adults just got by. They weren't able given the time to process because they just kept moving, and they were okay in school, so they didn't have to worry about school, and people left them alone because they were okay in school, right? So they were able to continue to build achievements and go places, right, with their degrees. But a lot of those people with degrees are hurting just like everybody else, but they just keep moving that they haven't had time to process. I go into these spaces and I have grown men and women crying in my engagements, like from all type, like people with PhDs. Like I've had them go in there and just break down because that's the first time they actually get to look in the mirror, right, and stop. And because I come to their workspace, first time in their workspace where they got to do this work. So with these schools, it's about getting the staff to be able to do that, because it's a kid, they don't do what you tell them, they do what they see you do. All right, they do what you do, they don't do what you say. So if you had, in order to create this environment of restorative power and all this other stuff, you got to lead the work from the top to bottom. So you got to be able to create these spaces for staffs, which is very difficult to do. I've been in the game for 13 years. I'm in the school building right now. I'm in my office right now. And I think it's all about, you know, the schedules are heavy. Teachers got a lot on their plate. And it's all about being able to create these spaces where it's more comfortable to build accountability. And I think the way to do that is to align it to their own lifestyles. Because if you're just doing it from 9 to 5 and you don't see any reason to bring it home, it's not going to work. You got to make it something that's impactful that you can take home and be like, I could use this with my siblings. I could use this with my parents. I could use this with my friends. And that is what's going to make the difference for these spaces, because when you get those people to do it, live it out, then you get the kids to follow, and you got an example for the kids, right, to be able to see a different way out. And then people don't take things personal, because when a kid is going through something, the teacher can see themselves in the kid. And that's the problem. We're not seeing ourselves in the kids as a whole collective to be able to support the kids in these spaces. And the reason we're not able to see these kids is because when we were kids, we weren't granted these spaces, and we just had to go along, and we just had to keep moving on and be successful. Times have changed, things have changed, and we need a different way of doing things. And this is what I do.
Yeah, I love what you mentioned there, because one of the things that I see, and I speak about this often within my story, is what I'm hearing you discuss right now is the mask. So we come into schools, we come into our life, and we have this mask on, and teachers have them on, as you're talking about, whether you got a PhD, a master's degree, bachelor's. It really doesn't matter what walk of life you come from, because we're talking about trauma. We're talking about traumatic experiences that you have gone through, that you didn't process through. You went through it, but you didn't process all the different elements, the feelings, the emotions, to really come to a space to where you can have a conversation like we're having right now, and it doesn't hurt anymore. Not that it doesn't hurt, but it doesn't have the emotional. It doesn't send you on the emotional roller coaster that it once sent you on before, and you're able to speak about it from a place that is connecting to somebody else that may be going through that as well, and you can now share some wisdom, some knowledge, whatever the case may be. But the mask is what we have on, and it sounds like to me like you are helping people to remove their mask, to allow them to be who they truly are, and leading from that space. Like not like saying like, oh man, you know what, this is something that the district told us to do, and so we're going to do it. No, this comes from within.
Exactly. It's called the mass. I call it the dance. Like I told you before, I grew up in a bilingual household, Puerto Rican household. So I grew up hearing music my whole life. Like every time, like there could be like we could dance. Everybody could dance. Salsa, merengue, bachata, and it's crazy because the room could be tense, and people could be, not in a good place. The music go on, and everybody's able to dance so well that they learn to dance around the issues, and nobody learned how to be direct. And I think when you playing doing the dance, when you're doing this dance and you turn the person around, there's always this gap in between. And then the dance, if you listen to the music, because I broke it down to a science, if you listen to the music, it's it's about loss, it's about relationship, hurt, it's about, and then it switches to happy, and the emotions will just keep switching, but we keep dancing, and we're not processing. There's this gap between you and your partner when you're dancing, right? And there's this disconnect because you just dance real happy to a sad song, right? An emotional song talking about depression. Then it goes into a whole different emotion in the next song. But we just keep dancing circles around the issue. And I think once we get to a place of, yes, you can dance. It's good to know how to dance, right? But you got to be able to dance forward too, so that you can be direct with people. or else you continue to dance and feel that gap for the rest of your life, that gap of connection with people, real connection, right? Because we're used to like being in spaces and feeling like we're connecting, but feeling like a void because we're really not going there, right? But you got to go there, right? And that gap is every time somebody comes in the room and they do something that makes you uncomfortable or say something that makes you uncomfortable, is that first initial time that makes the difference. The first time you let it slide, it becomes what they call you. It becomes the norm of the actions they do around you, right? A person makes a decision the first time. If they want to be in your life and they're corrected, it's a decision of, oh, I don't want to make that person uncomfortable. I want to understand. Or it is like, I'm not going to mess with that person. Either way, you put yourself first. And I think we're so caught up in dancing and making people feel comfortable around us that we don't put ourselves first to close that gap. And that's what I struggled with growing up. And I still struggle with it. I come from a non confrontational household. I come from that dance. I know how to do the dance very well. But I think intentionally, I focused on surrounding myself around truth tellers and people that don't do the dance, that makes and allows me to grow and checks me and not afraid to tell me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear. You got to surround yourself around those people to be actually able to do this type of work. Because if you're doing this work with kids, but you don't have those people in your life and you're not addressing people in your life, you're dancing. And kids know when you're dancing, right? Because they're going to follow the people that are about it, right? But if you dancing too much, it becomes evident eventually. And then you get called out for it. And then it's a spiral of, the workspace turning into this place of unhappiness.
I think the reason why I connect with the work that you do so much is because it's personal for me, and I use your terminology. I know how to dance. I know how to dance around the issues, and I learned that at a very early age. You mentioned the challenges that you had younger, and the kids in our school system, or just people all around have these experiences that they have, and in our households, it's like don't talk about it. Like you kind of just keep the car in the middle of the road, or what happens in this house stays in this house. And now you have a whole house full of people that really have these emotional, they different, happy, sad. You said the different types of music, and we just dancing around like everything's okay, and it's not okay. So for me, I want to ask you this question just for my sake. Like, so for me, I lost three of my siblings, by the time I was 14. And, I didn't all the time like respond correctly when I went into a school. I unfortunately had some instances to where, I got in some trouble, said some things that I shouldn't have said, anger, fight, mad and frustrated about what I was experiencing. Um, for an individual like me, as I walk into a school, how can an educator recognize that I'm dancing? How can they recognize that? Man, like for me to be able to like stop the music, how can an educator like stop the music and kind of maybe address a situation like that by owning this and and going through this work themselves?
Uh, like I said, leading by example. You got to show them how to do it, not tell them how to do it. We're so accustomed to asking kids so many questions to tell them, to have them tell us about them, but they know nothing about us. That's where the first gap is. You got to go into telling your story. Like, for example, I'm teaching right now, I'm a college counselor. I, help my kids with FAFSA, with transcripts, with college applications, but I teach two courses at the end of the day where we're teaching the same stuff that I'm counseling one on one with the kids, but whole group. And I have these opportunities to, give them life skills, right? And I talk that I connect with them. Like we're doing college essays right now. So, and I tell them, hey man, like you got to go deep. You can't just talk about what everybody else talking about. Oh my God, I want to go to college because I want to be better than my parents, or I want to. It sounds the same, and I deal with colleges on a daily basis. I coach college administrators in building curriculum. So like I'm around these people constantly, and they telling me like, "Yo, I hate reading these damn essays. They sound the same, right? They so boring." And so I go in there and I tell them, "Hey, if you're gonna write a story, talk." Like I open it like this. When I first met my kids, I thought like when we're doing a college essay, you got to break it down. I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna give you an example. I'll show you. You got to create a story and have the reader like be so intrigued to keep reading. So you got to go deep into talking something that's relatable because what you going through is relatable, right? I woke up in a cold sweat, like, you know, my knees weak, arms heavy, palms sweaty, and I'm thinking, is he dead? Is he coming back? He's gone again, and then I hear something, and I hear something in the hallway, and I, I look around, I look at the alarm clock. It's like 3 in the morning. I'm like 9 years old. I'm on the top bunk, and I'm like nervous. My brother's snoring. He's knocked out. So I creep down the bed, and I go towards the door, and I see a light in the hallway through the crack of the door. I'm like, what's happening? Like who's there? And then I go to the door, and I open it a little bit, and then I see the bathroom light in the hallway bathroom on, and the door is cracked, and there's steam coming out the bathroom. And as I walk closer, I'm getting more and more nervous. I'm scared, and I'm worried about like what's happening here. And I remember I push open the door, and the steam hit me right in the face. And I'm like, and I just hear some noise, and like somebody moving. So like I pull up all the courage, and I move the curtain, and I see my father in the tub, fully clothed with Tim's jeans, his work clothes on, blacked out in the tub with the shower hitting him while he's trying to wake himself up. That was a moment I knew there was a problem. That's how I found out addiction was real. That is why I got to a place. That's what made me think in that moment. I kept saying, I don't want to be like my father. It all changed when I started asking, Bob, what happened to you? What made you want to get to the tub and make you run away and, drink? When I started having those questions, I got the right answers. And then it became a pattern of understanding what I need to do to not be in that place. That's how you start your essay. And when I go to college, I'm going to continue to ask these questions so that I can get better. I'm not the best student, but I know how to ask questions and I can get it. That is an essay that'll get you into college. So like that's how they met me. So they know the story. I told them about that stuff, and I had kids in the class crying because they experienced their dad drinking, had not being able to connect with their father, right? And then later on, I told them about my dad's suicide in class. They know things that they shouldn't. Like most times, teachers feel like they shouldn't know that stuff, but that allows me to build a relationship with them moving forward.
So what I'm hearing for you is that the vulnerability is the key to not only connections but empathy and understanding. And educators, we have to get to that place of understanding because that's what takes away the judgment aspect of, well, why would you do that? Like, from a high and mighty standpoint, it's like I understand why you got to that place, and I think that's key, man. And man, I just think everything that you shared here is something that every um, high school, middle school campus needs, every college campus needs his work. Because honestly, man, we have a lot of people, and I don't care if you're in education, what walk of life you are, we get to a place where we start living based on what we think we need to provide to others, and we stop living for ourselves. And I know that you are changing lives. You're restoring people back to power, and I appreciate everything about the work that you're doing. And so, man, thank you so much for your vulnerability. Thank you so much for your voice. Thank you so much for your journey and allowing your journey not to stop with you, but for you to put that on display for the lives of others. Man, it's a joy to be able to sit at your feet, to be able to see from a distance, and just see that the impact that you're making. And so uh, we end our segments here with this question, and it's with this segment called "Better Days Ahead." And what that is just the encouragement to our listeners that if they may be going through some challenging times, maybe not, as hopeful about, what the future is. This is our opportunity to provide that for them, to let them know that there are better days ahead. So, do you have any mantras, any quotes, or anything you live by that keeps you hopeful?
That's a good one. I know you asked me this before, and I had the answer, but I guess I'm living my truth, and just go about what I'm feeling in this current moment. I think for everybody out there that's going through something, it's just don't be afraid of what could come out of that interaction. I think with whoever, it could be a stranger, but I think you learn more about yourself in those conversations than you believe you will. And I think you engaging more with people will allow you to get to know yourself better. And I think the second thing is, you know, pushing those conversations with yourself. Like if you don't have those people now, I think practicing, like I told you before, what I help people do is practicing to get ready for those conversations. You got to be in that dark room. It took I had to be in that dark room alone, and those conversations were scary to have with myself. My father was afraid to be in that dark room with his own thoughts, with his own worries and traumas to relive through. I think when you're too busy, and COVID showed us this, when you're too busy, you don't have time to process that. We need to continue to recreate those dark spaces by ourselves so that we can master that space. Because if we keep running from that dark room, when the dark room comes, as for example, COVID all over again, if COVID happens again, people gonna be in shock, and you're gonna spiral. So recreate that space, that dark place, for you to go in and dominate that space. One of my favorite lines is from The Dark Knight, when Bane was like, "You merely visit the dark. I live here," because he's used to walking in the dark. He grew up. He was born there. Meanwhile, Batman was visiting the dark, and it wasn't until Batman had to go through his dark place to be able to come back and lash out on Bane. So we need to take that to example. Like, you may not be going through hard things like other people are, but everybody's going through something. If you don't get yourself in that dark place to process and control your dark room.
Man, and so we end our segments just like that, with the encouragement that we get from better days ahead. Like, don't be afraid of the dark spaces within your life. Like, go into there, face them. Don't be afraid to walk through that door, to ask yourself and to relive the moment so that you can master those places, so that those places do not master you. My man, Carlos Malave, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for everything that you provided here today. This is another segment of Mindset on Resilience. We're out. Until next time.